True crime as propaganda.
I'm ready.
And I watched some true crime to get me ready. There's a new Netflix documentary that I watched.
Which one was it?
Oh, I think it's called Killer Victim or Victim something about victims.
Okay.
But I'm a huge fan of the true crime genre. A longtime fan of the genre myself. I do often question why I like watching these true stories of macabre events. True crime stories and the made-for-TV movies based on actual events are dramatic stories with well-developed characters and a usually cathartic ending, all without making any real moral or political statements. Good guys and bad guys, and in the end, the perpetrators are brought to justice. But how does what we watch affect how we understand crime, the legal system, victims, and reinforcing stereotypes? How can true crime reinforce underclass ideology views that poor people that commit certain crimes are inherently defective? The majority of crime that is actually committed is property crime and robbery. Murder and rape, which are common plot devices in the true crime genre, are more often than not perpetrated not by strangers, but by people known to the victim. Also within the genre, there can be an obfuscation, I can't even say the word that I wrote, about who are the real victims of stranger sexual assault and murder when it comes to women. Black and brown women, Native women, trans women suffer higher rates of sexual assault, but aren't normally profiled, especially if they work in the sex industry. When these cases are profiled, the morality of the woman is often questioned, and the empathy is looked at differently. There must be a savage nature of the crime to engage the audience that usually is far removed from this reality. So does true crime reinforce the perfect victim trope? In this post George the police and abolishing is a propagandic pushback on the once popular narrative that cops were the problem. In a recent true crime doc I watched on Netflix about the infamous Night Stalker killer Richard Ramirez, police abuses of authority were glanced over because they had to catch the monster. And Ramirez was indeed a monster, one that was made, not born. What do we make of this tantalizing genre, Taylor?
Man, true crime is for me, it's a really kind of complicated beast to kind of tackle because, again, Harvey and I did a couple episodes about true crime on our former podcast, and there is this like very primal thing like in the back of your brain that is like it's almost just like a compulsion to like want to hear these things. And then there's also the idea of like, what am I consuming for entertainment, and like how does that come back to like people who like this is the worst thing that's ever gonna happen in their family. And there's just a lot of true crime of like someone who has enjoyed it as someone who has really probably in the last 3 or 4 years become really critical of a lot of the true crime stuff that I'm seeing. It can be hard to find things that like do interest you because like I am interested in the genre, but of things that also align with my politics of like I don't want to listen to propaganda. I don't want to listen to things that praise the police or, you know, or only perfect victims. So it's very it's a tough thing, and it's like it feels very embedded in our society.
What's interesting is I think what we look at as true crime is I want to cast a big net.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we have Chris Hansen on the screen, and you know Gene goes in his Gene accent. I won't even try to do it anymore.
Oh, please, you do a perfect Gene impression.
Is the pedophile guy true crime? To catch a predator. And what was funny was like the Brits were going back and forth about what is true crime in the American sense, because they have their own true crime stuff. And there's I don't know if you've seen the new Black Mirror on Netflix.
I smoke entirely too much marijuana to be watching Black Mirror. I got scared watching a game show last night and had to go
Jesus
lay under
Christ.
my weighted blanket.
I think you're smoking that shit Smokey was smoking on Friday. You the F Hector. That's the F Hector PCP laced weed. Quit
It's
buying
that damn Oklahoma weed that I got.
Stop buying it from the essays. But have me in Debo chicken coop.
I love that we're handling this very sensitive topic with the care and love that it deserves.
Hey, well, look, it's Saturday. Saturday is my fun day, my I don't have to run day.
Okay.
But seriously, I find this an interesting topic and somewhat important because when you look at trends, the movies and TV shows definitely follow trends, right? So after the George Floyd moment, a lot of stuff is being made and police violence is getting inserted in everything, right? It's always subtext somewhere. There was even a movie that the gentleman that did Birth of a Nation, I don't want to call it a remake, but like his take on Birth of a Nation, which was about the slave revolt. That another friend of show worked on that movie, but he made a movie about a dude who's, I think his son gets killed by a cop, unwarranted shooting. I can't think of the name of it. And they take over a police station. And then, you know, all the Netflix and Amazon were like, you know, in this time, we have all these black movies to calm you Negroes down. You know, we even curated a whole section of movies with good Negroes, and maybe even some of them play cops.
Yeah.
Watch the Lethal Weapon movies while you're at it. And there seems to be a pivot in this post George Floyd era. I feel like I'm seeing less news stories on police brutality and more stories on rising crime in urban centers and growing visible homeless encampments. What role now is true crime playing in this? And I'll even up the ante because I don't know if you got this story where you live, but in San Francisco, a C-suite executive at Square was murdered, and all the tech bros, and when I say tech bros, I mean like the Elon Musks of the world, you know, the big timer people that are literally the guys that started these companies, made just scathing statements on the state of San Francisco, liberal politics, the fact that during Chesa Boudin's very short time in office as district attorney, he was too lax on criminals. And as you're seeing more and more, you know, smash and grabs in stores, and a lot of stores are leaving, and they're leaving for various reasons, right? Just literally leases were up during the shelter in place. And it was kind of an opportunity for businesses that weren't doing that well beforehand to get out of Dodge because the way we shop is changing. And also they can have a bit of a capital strike now, like, hey, you want us to stay, we need tax breaks. But it feels like the narrative is changing on what the societal ills are. Now it's devolving urban centers filled with roving criminals and massive city homeless encampments. And so as this man got murdered, and so the pushback was, oh, you know why? Because the city is filled with drug addicts, and a drug addict stabbed him. So like I said earlier in the show, in my opening monologue, most murders are committed by, you know, people that you know. And that man ended up being killed by someone he knows. And it looks like it may even have been an honor killing. We're not going to get into the particulars of the case, but it definitely wasn't the story that these billionaires wanted to tell. And they haven't retracted. So what role do you think true crime plays in all that?
Yeah, so I think it actually plays a really, really interesting role in that, and especially like during the pandemic. I think there was, and I know I was somebody who did this, like the very beginning days of the pandemic. I listened to true crime, kind of felt like nonstop. And I think if you listen to this stuff so much, and if you're listening to places or you're listening to true crime or watching true crime, and it's not from like a really nuanced point of view, it is two ding dongs who got microphones in the pandemic. And I'm allowed to say that as a ding dong who got a microphone during the pandemic to start
Yeah.
a podcast. Um, and not coming at it from a critical point of view. And so I think there has been something that I've had to do is not only killing the cop that's inside your head, but you also have to kill like that prosecuting attorney that's in your head. And I think the more that people have listened to this, and the more also that people have gotten Ring doorbells and they know every coming and going of their neighborhood, or they have just this idea in their head that like now that they are in constant danger all the time. I think that has led to an increase of concern about property crimes or
Mhm.
shoplifting or whatever, because people think like, oh well, like shoplifting is this like gateway drug into stabbing a C-suite executive. And I think you like if you do that, if you listen to that and you consume it from like a non-critical source, which like I'm guilty of. Like there's sometimes on a long drive back from wherever, there's nothing I love more than turning on like a trashy kind of true crime podcast to just get me through the drive.
Mhm.
But that just like grows that cop that's in your head just stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think that's what's leading to now it's like, oh well, it's this, this murderer that we heard about on Netflix or on Crime Junkie or whatever it is. Oh, he started out stealing when he was 15. So if we have these people who are stealing, they're going to come into my home in East Fayetteville, Arkansas, and they're going to murder me. And it's like, Diane, I promise you that's not going to happen.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that because another thing I'm seeing a rise of is YouTubers that do true crime stuff or just like daily crime.
Mm-hmm.
So more like property crime. Hey, this store got robbed. Here's a person getting maybe attacked, and the Ring camera caught it. And these things are getting a massive amount of views.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know too many people that don't like true crime. I mean, it is a popular genre because it does fall into the whole thriller genre.
Yeah.
And getting ready for this show, and as a shitty show host, I forgot to send you some of the research material that I read for
Listen,
this.
listen, I was just coming in. I have an opinion on everything.
Mhm.
And I figured if we had any dead space, I could just talk about Dune for 10 minutes again.
I'm going to need you to keep that in mind because I'm going to need you to do that when I set up for the phone line.
Okay.
But I was reading some stuff from some medical journals about true crime and kind of the problematic nature of it. And I even saw somebody write in the comments here out of the corner of my eye. They said that kind of the flip side to Copaganda is the less statistics. And I do think there's a problem with statistics because if you think about statistics and the way they're kind of explained for crime, it usually goes over the past 30 years, things have gotten better. And I'm like, okay, for me as a California native, 30 years means, yeah, I get it.
Mhm.
Because you had this massive war on drugs that incarcerated millions of people, and you had this free flow of inexpensive cocaine that caused gang wars that what we're seeing right now is nothing close to that.
A-
Go ahead.
And I also think it's really important when you think about statistics of crimes, and I'm by no means a statistics person at all, but where do we get those statistics from? We get
Mhm.
them literally from the cops. We get them from, so it's like your data, your conclusions can only be as good as your data set. And like we see cops lie about, I mean, it's shit that doesn't even matter sometimes. Like if they're willing to lie about like these like shit that doesn't matter on a police report, or if they're willing to even lie again, as we've seen about the big things, like how good, how serious can we take this? How seriously can we even take these statistics? Like, you know,
It all depends on how you want to look at it, right? Because if you
yeah.
look at over 30 years, yeah, crime is definitely going to be down
Hmm.
over the last 30 years. But if we look at it maybe over the last 3, are you seeing a rise? And I think the problem is that if you're going that far back, that's almost like some Steven Pinker level
Hmm.
shit. Oh, everything's more peaceful. I don't know what you're talking about. I was just in San Francisco, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't necessarily feel safe
Hmm.
um, walking around at night. I mean, I did walk back at like 2 in the morning and it was fine. But um,
Flex.
no, it's not. Again, if you rob me, you're just practicing. I don't have any money. If I carry any cash, it's pesos. So they were like, hey, break yourself. I was like, brother, I got like 60 pesos on me. That's enough to get you a taco in my hood. You can't get shit with that.